We will talk about Spurs because they're playing in Wembley tonight. It's poised on a knife edge, I would say, with Spurs having the advantage. Their knife is slightly sharper than Juve's. But first, let's talk about Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid last night. Real Madrid winning 2-1 on the night and cruising through the tie, it has to be said, 5-2. Do you agree with what Graham Souness had to say? I appreciate you didn't see Graham Souness on TV3, but he basically said Paris Saint-Germain's attitude stank. They weren't playing for their manager. If that's how they walk around on a big night like last night, that's how they must behave in training. And he basically just said their attitude stinks. What do you make of that? Would you agree with it from what you've seen?
I thought it was a very disappointing performance. There was a lot of noise coming out of Paris Saint-Germain going into this game that some elements of the team thought they were better without Neymar, that this gave themselves a better chance to actually do something in this. And this could have been their way to answer their critics from last season, where they, of course, won 4-0 in the first leg at the Parc des Princes against Barcelona before that humiliating second leg. This was a chance for them to redeem themselves. And instead, even though they had this formidable record at the Parc des Princes, 51 games undefeated in all competitions, they lost to a Real Madrid team that started with Kovacic in midfield, had Vasquez out wide. You looked at the three substitutions that Zidane made in the second half. He brought on Bale, Cruz, and Isco. So three of the you players you really associate this Real Madrid side with, and they didn't start. And yet PSG offered nothing. Cavani, Mbappe hardly did anything. You can praise Ramos, Varane, and Casemiro all you like, but I didn't think they really were challenged all that much. And PSG just disappeared. And I think from that point of view, it's very disappointing. I certainly expected them to have a real pop at Real Madrid last night, and it never came.
Neil Lennon said in the analysis that Real Madrid just looked that bit more streetwise. They just looked that bit more experienced, that while they're having an inconsistent season in their own league, they still know how to win a big game. But I would say it's surprising that PSG couldn't do that as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, PSG, this isn't a team that is lacking in European experience. Aside from the additions of Mbappe and Neymar, who, as I said, wasn't there last night, this is the team that has been gathering European experience on the biggest stage for the last, 7 years since the Qataris took over the club, more or less. And yet, they really disappointed from that regard last night. I think there is a question mark at PSG about leadership. We saw that in the first leg when Unai Emery kind of quite surprisingly decided to bench Thiago Silva, the captain of the club, previous captain of Brazil. Some people don't think he is the biggest talker, someone who necessarily kind of can lead by his actions.
Is that because maybe in the French league they don't need leaders because they're just so good they can kind of cruise through, and then when they get into these tough situations they kind of don't know how to handle it? Or am I just making up an excuse for a bunch of pampered billionaires, millionaires?
No, I mean, you look at Marco Verratti last night, okay? I mean, he's still a relatively young player. He's been at PSG for, 4 or 5 years now. And, whilst he is someone who can, really set the tempo of the game, dictate a game, we still see these moments of impetuousness from him, which really cost his team last night. It was very strange, I thought, that when PSG went down to 10 men, the next 5 or 10 minutes, they had their best spell. They actually got themselves back into the game with a goal. It's just, again, sort of really kind of says a lot about how much of an enigma this team is on the European stage. But, I felt for Unai Emery a little bit last night. I thought he got his tactics wrong in the first leg with the lineup that he chose. Very young centre-backs, Kimpembe, Lo Celso in midfield. Yesterday, he kind of went back to the kind of team that we expected him to play, but he didn't get a performance from his players. And, the writing is very much on the wall for him, even though statistically they're having their best season in Ligue 1 ever. It's not good enough. His contract was only going to be extended if he got them to a semi-final. Instead, they've gone out in back-to-back years in the round of 16, the first knockout stage, which is clearly not good enough for a team that spent 220 million on one player last summer and 190 million on another. They didn't just break the world transfer record once, they could have done it twice in the same summer. And we've seen very little bang for their buck in that regard.
James, what sort of chance would you give Liverpool, just they've actually, I think they've conceded 1 goal in 5 games now. If they've gotten that kind of aspect of their make-up right, the way they're playing going forward, obviously last night was a dead rubber, but they do have a bit of a chance.
Yeah, I think, look, last night is a kind of useful exercise. I know it bored the teeth out of people watching it, but that's a side of Liverpool that I think we need to see. You know, that a team that can actually manage games on a sort of big European night. Okay, they had the first leg, they had their qualification already in the bag, but you can quite easily get complacent in second leg games like that, particularly when you rotate the team. Not everyone comes in, is up to it, but I think that was important. I think that front three of Liverpool is as good as any front three in Europe right now. I think it will terrify anyone at the pace that it's got and the unpredictability that it brings as well. Klopp has pedigree in not only getting Borussia Dortmund to a Champions League final, but remember, in his first season at Liverpool, he got them to a Europa League final. They are a very good cup side. I think they can beat anyone on their day. And I think
that is a big point, because just with Salah and Firmino in particular, they just have such impromptu genius. It's very, very hard to defend against that at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they seem to be able to create chances, not just 1 or 2, but they'll get 3, 4, 5. I mean, Salah has been so prolific. He's had already a better season than Luis Suarez's best season with Liverpool. It's only March, and yet Salah actually still misses quite a lot of chances. Yeah. You go back to that sort of Man City game at the start of the season before Sadio Mane got sent off. He missed, 1 or 2 chances to put them in the lead in that game. That I think is, this Liverpool team, I think, always believes that it will create something to get them into a tie, get them something away from home in Europe. And I think that's obviously adds to their confidence when they play in Europe. I think it's one of the reasons why they have to be seen as a serious threat in this competition.
And they are what fans love at the moment, a team that are unpredictable, that can score goals, and you'll always get a bit of drama out of them. So they are what we kind of love to watch at the moment. A team that a lot of people love to watch at the moment are Spurs, who go into tonight's tie with Juventus, tied at 2-2. The game is on at Wembley, but James, that's now maybe an advantage, whereas before it wouldn't have been. They finally seem to have settled into Wembley in the Champions League.
Yeah, and this is a place that Juventus hate going. They've never won in London in 6 attempts. They haven't actually beaten an English side in a 2-legged knockout tie in European competition since 1984. They're making the case that the pressure is on Spurs because Spurs got a better result than Juventus in the first leg, and it's something that they should protect. If they come on to them, then that will play into Juventus' hands. Juventus look at it like this. They played badly for 80 of the 90 minutes of that first leg, and yet they still had the chance to go 3-0 up on that counter-attack that Higuain missed, and 3-1 up when Higuain missed that second penalty in the game. So, I think this is going to be a fascinating game between 2 quite evenly matched teams. I know people look at it and say Juventus have got more experience because they've been to the final in 2 of the last 3 years. But if you look at where these teams are at kind of financially, they're more or less the same. Juventus are 10th in the Deloitte Rich League. Spurs are 11th. So there's not all that much difference there, even though we make a lot about the fact that Spurs are overperforming as per their payroll. I think it's going to be fantastic tonight.
And it's one of those weird situations where we know Juventus will probably sit back and catch them on the counter-attack, whereas with Spurs we know that, common sense might dictate that they should sit back, but then they wouldn't be true to themselves, so they'll probably press on. So we know that they know what each of them is going to do. They know that they know. So it kind of is creating this kind of interesting chat and conversation ahead of this game as to whether or not they'll both do what we know they probably should, or whether or not they'll go against themselves. And if they go against themselves, if you follow my lead on this, I'm kind of confusing myself, then are they kind of losing something in a tactical advantage sense?
I think what was great about Spurs' performance 3 weeks ago was the fact when they went 2-0 down, they didn't stop playing their own game. They just kept faith with it because they knew that they would get the chances, even against the Juventus side that at that stage hadn't conceded a goal since 1973 or something like that. But I think Spurs will remain true to this philosophy that they have. They caused Juventus all kinds of problems, which I think they'll still cause in this second leg. I'm very interested to see what Juventus do because Juventus kind of found balance with this 4-3-3 after their sort of last defeat in the league back at the end of November. And they moved away from that in the first leg because they had injuries. Matuidi, for example, was out. He'll be back tonight. I think that's a big difference for Juventus. But they played 3-5-2 at the weekend as well. So they're a little bit like Spurs. They're a very chameleon-like team. You don't really know what you're going to get. Now, the comparison that people are making is that 2 years ago, Juventus drew 2-2 at this stage against Pep Guardiola's Bayern Munich in the first leg of the round 16. They then went to Munich. And for the first half of that game, they put in one of the best performances I've ever seen Juventus play. They got 2-0 up at half-time. They should have had a third, which was chalked off erroneously by the linesman. And they took that game into, it looked like they were going to win that tie. No one expected them. So they might come out of the blocks fast and furious, Juventus. That might be something that you don't necessarily expect for them, and kind of do what they did in Munich 2 years ago.
I guess, James, as well, it just says, English football's in a good place at the moment. Spurs likely to qualify. Liverpool are there. Man City are obviously coasting through. Looks to have a strong chance of certainly winning the Champions League, one of the English teams this season.
Oh, you definitely say so. I think at the moment, I look at Manchester City, obviously, and Liverpool as being the best placed to do that. I think Spurs, if they go through and get into the quarterfinals, then anything can happen. I think this team has such a good balance to it. Both at the back and up front, that's they can reasonably look at this and think that they can do something in this competition. So look, this is something that European football's giants have been expecting for some time. The Premier League has been wealthy and a lot wealthier than La Liga, Serie A, and the Bundesliga for a long time now. 3 or 4 years, and yet they haven't seen bang for their buck in this competition. Now it's finally happening. And, I think, for example, tonight's coach, Juventus' Massimiliano Allegri, he said the Champions League is going to be tougher this year because there are 5 English teams. And those 5 English teams are a lot richer than, everybody else aside from Real Madrid and Barcelona. So, it's about time that the English teams got their act together and performed to expectation.
James, a quick prediction from yourself ahead of tonight?
Well, Juventus don't want it to go to extra time, so I think this will be 1 in 90 minutes. I have a sneaky feeling that Spurs will still cause them enough problems to go through.
Okay, James Horncastle, thank you very much for joining us here on Off the Ball AM.